SI here at JCC. And this is Stephanie Chastain, and she's going to be talking about the SI Toolkit formula for success. And if you would please fill out these sheets that I gave you, these yellow sheets, and give them back to me before you leave, that would be much appreciated. So, is there any other information you would like them to know?
Oh, no, I didn't take it from there.
Okay, thanks. Thanks, everybody.
Okay. So, my name is Stephanie Chastain. I'm from Eastern Michigan University. I'm the graduate assistant for the supplemental instruction program. I've been working with the program for the past year, and we actually came here as our first conference experience with the program, so that was really exciting. And today I'll be talking to you about the SI Toolkit Formula for Success. So basically we'll just talk about some of the tools that our office and program uses to make our program better and improve upon it, and also to make it a good experience for our SI leaders and for the students that our SI leaders work with. So first we'll talk about our objectives. We'll talk about the SI model. We'll talk about courses that we offer at Eastern for SI. We'll talk about a trend data report, which is something that our university research office, they create that, and it's an online system that we can go into and look at. I'll talk about the course structure, which includes the professor teaching style and evaluation methods. We'll talk about professor-SI leader relationships. We'll talk about our professor history spreadsheet, which is an actual office tool that we use through our shared database, and a mid-semester attendance meeting, which was created. Even though we follow all of these other tools, sometimes students aren't receiving that attendance that we want them to be at. So first we'll talk about choosing a good fit, choosing courses that fit the SI model. So the definition of SI is that it's basically a collaborative study session. Most of you probably know what it is, otherwise you probably wouldn't have came to this presentation. So the purpose of it is to create independent, confident learners. Some of the students that attend SI, they're new freshmen or sophomores that don't necessarily have the study skills needed to take those upper level courses. So we focus on the 100 and 200 level courses, in addition to Gen Ed requirements and gateway courses. Gateway courses at Eastern, they're courses that students have to take to get into professional programs, such as our business college or nursing or education, and also basically anything in the healthcare field because we focus a lot on sciences. And we also look for a 30% or higher drop rate. So these are the classes that have really difficult content. These are the ones that students are having trouble with, regardless of who teaches it. So this is where we will get the higher attendance of students. And also, the course structure. If it's an online course, we're probably not going to get a lot of students attending SI. Also, if the professor has open book exams or take-home tests, we're probably not going to get a lot of students at SI either. So these are some of the courses that we have at Eastern this semester. We have a lot of foreign languages, natural sciences, bio, chem, physics. We have social sciences, which is sociology. We have psychology, and business classes, accounting. We have a couple like statistics sort of classes that are required to get into the business program, and we have a few of the math courses as well. So now I'll show you what these trend data reports look like. They're through our IRM office, which is our university research office. It's a relatively new tool. It shows the course grade distribution based on the semester. So we can do the fall semester for like the past 4 or 5 years and see what the trend is in that class. And it has to have a 5 student or higher enrollment level in it. And it's available from 2003, but it'll only show up in the past 5 years. So this is a screenshot of what it'll look like. So we have Chem 120, which is one of our basic pre-nursing, pre-med chem courses. 64% of the students pass with a C- or higher. 36% of the students fail. And you can also see we have really high enrollment rates too. So we'll have a lot of students to choose from to get into the class. And it goes from 2008 to 2012, and it's pretty stable in the upper 30%.
Can I ask you what program that is?
I'm honestly not sure. It's just a new tool that our director found from that office, and it was created through the Faculty Development Center to help with the departments, and so they can see where there are areas that they need to improve.
So it was created internally?
Right,
Okay.
yeah. And you have to have a login to get into it as well.
Thank you. I was gonna say something.
And so this is a good course that we would want to focus on for SI. This is a marketing class. It is a 200 level course, has really high enrollment rates. However, a lot of the students are doing pretty well in this course, so the content probably isn't too difficult for them. And if we had an SI leader for this course, they probably wouldn't get that much attendance. They'd probably get maybe like 1 or 2 students that might be struggling. But it's pretty common for students for SI sessions not to be much greater than 5 or 10 students for the regular class. So we probably wouldn't choose this class for SI. So now we'll talk about the course structure, which is the teaching style of the professor, their evaluation methods, and whether it's face-to-face or online. So teaching styles of the professor, it can include PowerPoint presentations. Some professors just like to get up and talk, and students just take notes. Sometimes they'll do question and answer discussions within their lectures. They will have videos and different multimedia types of presentations. But our SI leaders, they will incorporate those different teaching styles within their SI session. And there's also different evaluation methods. Professors can have in-class open, in-class closed book tests. It just depends on how they want to evaluate their students' learning. And there's also take-home quizzes, tests, and essays that students can do as well. But there's also online tests that are usually open book. But what we've seen is that in-class closed book evaluations, they're a better match for our SI model. We actually have a history class right now. The professor, he does all in-class lectures, they have a text that they have to read, but all of their tests are online. And what we've learned is that these students, they don't need to go to the sessions because they don't necessarily need to be prepared as much as other students that would have the closed book tests. And we also try to pilot with a remediation course in math, and we noticed that it wasn't very successful. We had about 300 or 400 students within the sections, and we've gotten maybe two students out of all 300 or 400 of them attend the sessions. And our SI leader, she went to the session, she introduced herself, she knows a lot of the professors within the math department, and we think that it's because it's focusing on high-risk students and not high-risk courses. So, and it's also shown in the literature that at-risk courses are a better fit for the SI model than looking at at-risk students. And another thing that we kind of dabbled in was talking about how some of the students, there's not like a prerequisite for these math courses. These students might be coming in with different experiences. There could be like somebody who hasn't been in school for the past 20 years, and then they decide that they want to come back to school, and they take this remediation course. It could also be a student that just doesn't excel in math, and they could be right out of high school. So these students are all at varying levels of math as well. Whereas other classes, say that Chem 120 class that I showed you, those students, they have an expected kind of standard when going into that class that they should know. So our students might be at different levels as well. Does anybody have any questions up until now? So our professor-SI leader relations, we focus a lot on this in our training with the SI leaders, and it's also important to find a good match and also have professors that have worked with SI before. So some of the common misconceptions of SI are that professors, whoever has an SI leader, they're a terrible teacher. They don't know how to teach, they don't know how to work with students, and it's just a common misconception. Which is why we're trying to focus on saying it's not the professor, it's not necessarily the students, it's just content. It's just so hard and heavy, and there's so many expectations for students nowadays. And also, another misconception of SI is that our SI leaders are not, that they think that they're teaching assistants. They're not there to grade papers, they're not there to lecture in the absence of the professor. They're there to help the students kind of within the classroom, depending on what the professor's preferences are, and also outside of the classroom, so that the student, because that's where most of the students do their comprehensive learning. And we've noticed that a positive professor-SI leader relationship, it can boost attendance. If the SI leader is going up to the professor before and after class, saying even just to say hi, all the other students in the lecture are going to be like, oh my gosh, they're up there talking to the professor, they must know what they're doing. Because most of the professors, students are afraid of them. So if that SI leader just has that good relationship with them and the students can see it, they're going to trust that SI leader more, especially with the content of the course. And also if the professor's saying, you know, you should go to this session, if this material seems really difficult for you, you should go see this session with your SI leader, and you can better learn the material that way. And also SI leaders who have had that professor in a different course, or what ideally in that course that they've taken, they're generally more successful, because that SI leader, if they don't know that professor at all and they want to be an SI leader for them, they don't know how they do their tests, they don't know how they lecture, they don't know what the expectations are of the students unless they've taken that class before.
I have a question.
Sure.
Are students, all of the students encouraged to go there? It's not mandatory, it's voluntary, it's open to everyone?
Yep, it's voluntary. Anyone can go if you have an A and you're doing great, or if you think you're failing, or if you have a C. Anybody can go because everyone can benefit from it. Because what I see SI as, it's not only just learning content, but it's also being social with students and with other students in your field and department, so you're making connections that way. And also you might meet somebody and then you could study with them later on throughout the program as well. So what we developed is a professor meeting checklist for our SI leaders, because we believe that that professor-SI leader relationship is so important. So there's two different checklists. I just kind of highlighted some of the information that we have them go over, because we have a first professor meeting checklist and a continuing one. So the first one, they talk about getting on the course list so they can email students reminders. They talk about setting a weekly meeting time. We give our SI leaders an hour each week to meet with their professor. They can do it in 15-minute increments, half-hour increments, or they can just do it in that whole hour. And they don't have to meet for that whole hour, they're just given up to that time. And they can talk about some of the planned activities that the SI leader has done, or if the professor had an SI leader before, they can say, oh, you know, well, this person did this last semester and it seemed the students really seemed to like it, so they can talk about those different things. And also, we're in the process of creating an actual faculty information packet, which will have statistics in there about SI leader attendance and the mean difference in the grades of students who attend SI and students who don't. And it's also just going to talk about different roles of the professor and the student, our history at Eastern for SI. And we talk about attendance. Everybody knows that budgets get in the way of things, and if we're not showing that we are having an impact on the students, then we can't really utilize that class in the future. So the more attendance we get, the more we can offer SI for that class in the future. And also, sometimes the professors, they want the students to be real active within the lecture, but sometimes they want them to sit in the back and just kind of watch and hang out. So that's also a big thing to talk about for the SI leaders and the professors.
Can I just ask a question? So in looking at this, it seems like it's work for the professor, it's additional work for the professor.
Well, this is really, the SI leader will bring that to the professor meeting
Okay.
and just talk about some of the stuff that they...
Right, I guess like I'm just thinking about professor buy-in, like, I'm thinking like maybe you're only going to get those professors that are somehow intrinsically valuing it, someone like maybe, and maybe later we can talk about ways to get faculty on board.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Thanks.
Can I make a comment?
Oh, sure.
I'm from Eastern, so I've got a little bit of a history of it. What I have seen in SI, and Stephanie's only been here 1 year, and I think she's doing a terrific job with everything, is that I have found key advocates for the program, key professors. And what I have done is, done a lot of outreach with them. I've even had some of these key professors come in during our training as a way to include them in and keep the program running and show other faculty that it is a valuable program. And we try to really keep those connections going, because those key people can talk to other colleagues and it spreads. So, and if they're valued in the department, people will listen to it. So I think this booklet that we're going to put together, is gonna be important, and how we present this booklet's gonna be important. I'm not sure where we're gonna do this, because we can easily do it electronically, and I know that it's convenient, but I think sometimes that face-to-face with the department head or with a group of professors who are already advocates will be probably a better way to start the outreach. But yeah, so it really depends on, you know, your department and the connections you already have in keeping those key connections. Does that kind of, yeah.
Did you have anything?
No, I was just gonna say that. Here's a long experience.
Okay. And I would also say that the professors, we encourage them to choose their SI leaders. We don't just kind of like dump somebody on them. So a lot of the students will go to the professor, talk to them about SI, say, you know, I'm really interested in doing this for your class. I think it'll be really helpful, and I really liked working with you in the past. And our professors, they give out letters of recommendations for those SI leaders, saying that they want to work with them. So when we actually interview an SI leader, we ask if they've worked with the professor before and if the professor has had past experience with SI. However, what do you do if the student, they're like, I want to do Chem 120, that's what I want to do, but I say I'm a transfer student, or I passed out of it. So our office has created an ongoing office tool for a professor history spreadsheet. It's to keep record of which professors have worked with the program, and it's created through our returning decisions that our SI leaders, they turn in at the end of every semester, and they talk about whether they want to return with the program, if they want to switch professors or try a different class, and then they'll have like a little blurb about their experience within that class and with that professor. So this is, okay, yeah, you can kind of see it. So we'll have the semester, class, CRN, number of students enrolled, average attendance, and then the percentage, the SI leader, and some of the comments that they made. So this one says the class is not good for the SI lecture, the professor is not supportive of SI interaction. So maybe, and that was 7 years ago. So maybe that student didn't know that professor, or maybe that professor was kind of like, maybe I'll do it, and then we'll see what happens. So we use this. If a student comes up to us and says, I want to do this class, and we're like, okay, well, let's look at the class schedule, see which professors are available that semester, and we'll go look at the professor history. And we can also ask other SI leaders too, if they've had the course with that professor. And this is just for myself, the coordinator, and the SI student assistants. They can see that. So, you followed the SI model, you found a class that has a really high failure rate. You picked a 100 to 200 level course, it's a gen ed requirement, you found a course structure that fits great, and you found a professor that's really into the program, but you're still not getting attendance. What do you do? So what our program started is mid-semester attendance meetings. It's basically assessing the course from the SI leader's view, and it talks about room for improvement. It's not a negative, punitive thing. So our SI leaders, they get their attendance from each session. They have an attendance log that they turn into the office, has the EID numbers of the students that attend the course, and also the course number on it. It's inputted into our office database through our SI student assistants, we call them SISAs, and we have a data GA, and she compiles this report of the SI leaders and their average attendance, and then we analyze the report, and then I'll schedule the meetings with the SI leaders. So this is what our report looks like. I took off the names of everyone to try to keep it confidential, and it shows professor, SI leader, number of sessions, the number of students actually enrolled in the course, the average attendance of each SI session, and that percentage of that attendance. So I put the yellow means that it's kind of like a cautionary kind of thing, like there's 41 students in the class, less than 2 people are attending. What we've been doing in the past is focus on like a 5% value. So it's close to 5%, but my new kind of philosophy is that if there's less than 2 people in the SI session, how can it be collaborative? It's not going to have that collaborative feel. So these people are the ones that I might bring in if I have the extra time to bring those people in. But this one, this is that history course I was telling you about. 1 student showed up out of 80. So this is obviously where we need to find some room for improvement. So, and also our anthropology. I have 1 student, 1 SI leader, the top 2, he's getting great attendance. He's getting about 4 people each session. And the second one with a different professor, he's getting less than 1 person each session. So we're thinking, what's going on there? So we bring them in, and we have specific meeting topics. How would you describe the class? Well, the professor, he just kind of stands up there and talks, or uses PowerPoints, like basically the course structure. Talk about your SI sessions. Do you use games? Do you use interactive worksheets? We also have the trouble of students thinking, oh, well, that's the way the professor did it, so this is how I should do it. So we want to introduce the material in a different way, because if students aren't learning it in the classroom, maybe they have a different learning style. So one of the things we talk about in our training is different learning styles through the BARC, which is visual, audio, what's the R? Read, write, and then kinesthetic. Okay. Yeah, we talk about that during our training sessions to help improve that during our sessions. And also, we have an opportunity for our SI leaders to re-poll, which basically means that in the beginning of the semester, they poll their students and say, these are the times I'm available, and then have the students kind of rank where they think that they would actually go to the sessions, and then that's where the students turn in their room requests. So the SI leaders turn in their room requests and say, okay, I'm going to do mine Tuesday from 4 to 5 and Thursday from 1 to 2. But if we're seeing that nobody's showing up to the Thursday session, the SI leader has the opportunity to re-poll the class and say, you know, nobody's showing up to the session, is there a better time? And we give them the opportunity to do that, and we will reschedule their room if needed. Also, we ask, how do you promote your SI sessions? Do you get up in front of the class and say, hey, everybody should come to my SI session, it's really fun, I got this plan today and this plan, we got the test coming up, so it would be really beneficial for you to come to my session? Or are you just kind of sitting in the back and just hoping that they'll read your emails and come to the session? Is the professor endorsing you? Is the professor saying, hey, you should go to these sessions, they're really helpful, I meet with so-and-so a couple times a week, and they're really up to date on the content in my course, and I think it'll be helpful for the exams. And is the professor responsive during your weekly meetings? So we talk about their professor-SI leader relationship. And at the end I ask them this reflective question, and I basically say, if you could go back to the beginning of the semester, what would you do differently? Some of them, if they're new SI leaders, they will say, well, I wish that I was more outspoken about SI and more outgoing and got up in the front of the class and acted more confident. And some of the other, like returning SI leaders, they might say, well, I might have chose a different course. Or maybe I didn't think that I knew that professor as well as I thought I did. So, and that's basically where I end on the meeting topics. So, now I'll talk about the benefits of using this SI Toolkit. It's assisting students where they need it. We don't want to pick a course that everybody passes because they obviously have the skills that they need to pass that course. We want to pick the courses where students are having difficulties in. And it's also connecting with professors and departments. If we can get a couple key professors, say in the philosophy department, then they might be our advocates and talk to the other faculty members within that department and say, hey, I got this SI leader, you should try it out, it's really cool. And they're really helpful to my students. And it's also utilizing university resources. We work in the Home and Success Center. And some people don't even know we exist, but I'm sure that's true on a lot of university campuses. A lot of students don't know their resources. So the more that we connect with professors and departments, the more students will be aware of their resources. It also helps with SI leader retention. If we have an SI leader that is going to their sessions, preparing for their session, meeting with the professor, and they don't get anybody that comes to their sessions except 1 or 2 people, they're probably not gonna continue with the program because they're gonna, well, sometimes they'll consider it as a personal thing, or they'll just think, maybe I'm not right for this, but a lot of the students that get a lot of attendance, they're the ones that continue on with the program. And it's also promoting student success. So the more students that we the better classes that we pick, and the more relationships that we make throughout the university, the more we will be promoting student success in the game. So does anybody have any questions or thoughts? Sure.
When you're doing those sort of evaluations with your SI leaders, how soon, I know it's mid-semester, but what do you do with them if they tell you, basically, we're doing everything that we're supposed to be doing, it's just we're not getting the attendance? Do you pull them? Do you keep them in that class? What do you?
Yeah, they stay in the class. It seems they can say that they're doing everything, but then that's where I say, okay, well, tell me what you're doing, and then we'll list out what they're doing, and then I can think of other things, or I can go to, we have 3 student assistants that work in the office with me, and I can go ask them. Our SI leaders, they also go to team meetings every week, so they get interaction with 5 or 6 other SI leaders that are returning and new SI leaders in different classes, so they can say, well, I got this cool game that I use in bio, I'm sure we can change it to use in your film class, or something like that.
I wanted to add on to what you said about halfway through it. If even though we tell them that your attendance isn't where it really should be, considering the number of students in the class, Stephanie has a way of at least encouraging them to finish strong the rest of the semester. But I will say she has had, I don't want to call it a difficult conversation, but she's had to have that conversation with some students where she says, we're going to try everything we can to support you. However, you may want to consider, if you really like the SI program, thinking about another class, another professor. It's not doom and gloom where you're out, too bad. If they really, and we know if they really care about it and they enjoy it and they're doing everything else we ask them to do, Stephanie will start posing the question, okay, this is a learning experience. The next time, let's start looking for another class that we know will probably be more beneficial to more students. So we never kind of say, you're out. We look at what can we do in the future to find another course for
and
that.
To give an example for that, I have an SI leader, she's in Math 118, which is, I think it's like a pre-calc kind of course, but it's not listed on the Gen Ed requirements anymore. So it used to be a good class, and it does have a high fail rate, but I kind of told her, well, I took this advisor training, and they said, oh, well, this math, and this math lead up to this other math, so maybe we should try some of these other prereqs. And then we looked at the class schedule, because the class schedule was out by then, and just kind of talked about the different opportunities and options that she had.
Well, either one of you can answer this, but is the question really about mandatory SI? Because I look at the data and I've read some research, and we're doing all the things that you're saying, and we're thinking about implementing this next year. And we're thinking it's pretty expensive to hire an SI leader. We're going to give them a stipend for attending the class, and then it's several hours outside of the class. And failure rate is 25 to 30%. And the best numbers that I saw up there, and I think I saw it once, was you had 20% attendance in a class. But most of the numbers are around the 5% that you're talking about. So I'm just thinking, and then I've heard, some other information that says that sometimes the kids that come to the SI are the smart kids, not the struggling kids, and that's not our target audience. Or if anything, we would want an audience that maybe mix these 2 groups. So I'm wondering, what are your thoughts on mandatory SI, or do you do anything at all that makes it in any way mandatory? Because I know this sort of runs counter to the philosophy of its inception.
I have an answer. Stephanie, do you want to say something? Because I know we have one program that we have worked indirectly with, a pre-college program called SIP, Summer Incentive Program, and that's students coming out of high school that are trying to get admitted, officially to the fall, and they usually have SI, and we have in the past helped provide by either finding an individual or training them, and there it's mandated. They must go. But those are what we call our at-risk population. And so as far as our university, that's the only time where it was a mandate and students had to go. But then that was in relation to the whole program where everything was mandated for those students.
So like, I mean, like, we're talking with our instructor and we're saying, you know, we're suggesting that maybe they could put in their course syllabus, you know, that these sessions, so many sessions will be offered over the course semester, and it's part of the course requirement that you attend eight sessions or 10 sessions. Have you tried anything like that?
We haven't tried, but go
I
ahead.
was gonna say, you get into a confidentiality issue at that stage. We have one class that the professor offers extra credit if they attend SI sessions. It doesn't take the students very long to figure out that it really only comes down to about 1% of your grade in the end.
Right.
But we sign waivers for it because again, like you get into this issue of confidentiality that becomes a huge problem because students don't necessarily want the instructor to know that they're in seeking help because there is that idea that, well, why didn't you come to me?
We were trying to maybe tie it with an assignment into this philosophy of, you know, for every hour that a student spends in class, they need to spend so many hours outside of class, and part of your study hour has to be in this venue. It doesn't matter if you're an A student or a D student. I mean, we've read research too about extra credit, and we've also read that what
We
you're
don't like it.
confirming is that it doesn't really work.
We don't
The way
like
that
it.
it seems to work most, if it's mandatory, is that if it becomes a part of the course and that the SI becomes actually another credit hour that they get.
Right.
So, yeah.
I have a bit of military background for myself. Served 7 years in the Navy submarine fleet. My experiences with helping people understanding the curriculum they're learning, especially when they're doing training, things that they need to do on the ships. More or less we changed the perception of how they felt about receiving help. Instead of, I feel bad about myself because I'm asking for help, I should know this. So if we change the student's perception of what the SI sessions are about, that it's not really so much of a help, but we're there for you, we want to see you succeed, and you don't need to feel embarrassed about it.
Yeah, that's why we thought like maybe making everybody in the class go might be a better route.
There is more management of that, however, and there's a lot of issues, attitudinal, confidentiality issues that you do need to be concerned about, because
I mean,
working
we haven't
with.
done it, we were just thinking
Yeah,
about it,
yeah.
get information.
There's
Thank you.
someone up there.
Classic SI operates just like this. I mean, you're operating a classical supplemental instruction program where it is attached to the high-risk course. It's voluntary,
Yeah.
and you can tweak it, okay? At Delta, we tweaked. There's another program called Structured Learning Assistance that's out of Ferris. We use that at Delta. It's attached to our lowest level math and our lowest level English course. We've been chugging away with that for almost 50 years now. And in the last year, we changed the structure. We are now charging a lab hour for that time. They don't get a grade in it, but it's mandatory. And in classical structured learning assistance, the first 2 weeks are mandatory for everybody. Everybody has to go for the first 2 weeks, or until the first graded assignment. And if your grade is below X, whatever the instructor says, you have to keep attending until your grade is above X. So there are ways to fiddle around with it, then it no longer becomes the classic SI model from UMPC. But you're right, you can hold out the extra credit, but as soon as they figure out that
Yeah, it doesn't.
it has to be something like, okay, if you attend 5 sessions, we'll drop your worst quiz. It has to be something profound like that, not just some dilly little point here that's
The
not
first
gonna
couple
make
of
a difference.
semesters it'll work, because the
Yeah.
students don't realize like, oh, well, you know, if there are 17 weeks, if I go at least once, you know, or twice a week, blah, 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 I'll get a better grade. Yeah, students catch on very quickly that, yeah, but I'm not getting a better grade because it's the extra credit. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So,
and we feel like these aren't our decisions, these have to be faculty
oh yeah,
decisions.
that's totally a faculty decision.
Yeah, and it has to be their
And something we did for a long time, and perhaps you're going to include this in your new manual that you were talking about, we had all kinds of suggestions about how faculty could encourage. If if they show the least interest, if the faculty member doesn't mention it, doesn't put it in the syllabus, doesn't talk about it, it's not even worth it. Because if students will say, well, if the faculty member doesn't consider it important, why should I? Students don't do voluntary because they don't know what's good for them.
Have you ever tried, tied it to student interest, like for the sciences, we're gonna have a special learning session for the nurses? You might get, that's maybe up to 40% of a section maybe. Then that's not tied to grades, but it's tied to, oh, I should go here, and then they collaborate and meet friends, and maybe possibly study groups could come out of that voluntarily. Have you done anything like that, or any discussion like that?
Not at this university, but I started a peer mentoring program at Wayne State for psychology students, and it was basically like that, like, oh, you're interested in psychology or psych major, we have these office hours with peer mentors, and then we had, like just a couple days ago, they had Pass Fest, which it was Psychology Academic Support Services, and they just had like this open, like event, and they had lunch and like food and stuff like that, but they also had, questions like Jeopardy about like psychology theorists and psychology theories, and then they had professional development with career services, but focused in on psychology and just things like that. And even one of the peer mentors is an SI leader, and I was an SI leader at Wayne State too. And when I had, when they did exams, and the couple sessions after the first exam, nobody really shows up to sessions. Well, I would do like a professional development thing, like come in and we'll talk about clinical psychology in grad school, or we'll talk about fixing up your CV or resume, stuff like that. But it's really time-based and who shows up.
I had another question. Is the faculty, is that the person that decides what goes on in the SI lesson? Do they offer worksheets?
Well, our SI leaders, they can create worksheets, and then during the meetings, they take them to the professor and say, hey, does this look like something that would be beneficial to the students based on your test and what you're looking for them to learn as far as content?
Well, we also have our database with previous, once you tell them how that works in our college.
We have, it's kind of like Blackboard, but it's called EMU Online, and everybody calls it eCollege. And we have an actual course for SI leaders, and that they turn in their handouts that they make for their sessions and any games that they make. They'll turn them in with their paperwork every 2 weeks. And then we upload them on a database that anybody in the SI program can look up. So if I'm the new German SI leader, I can look up handouts that old SI leaders used in the past. And it also shows the course and the professor, since different professors teach and use different books.
Right. I was also wondering if you had any collaboration between disciplines, faculty members that are involved in this, between disciplines, to kind of grow ideas and suggestions.
Oh, what do you mean?
I don't know, like chemistry versus psychology.
Well, they have their team meetings, the SI leaders, and we'll have
What about the faculty members?
Oh, yeah, they don't collaborate together. They probably don't even know that different people have SI leaders.
That's something we're hoping that in the future will change. We have changed our upper level administration from the president to the provost, often in the last 10 years at least. And depending on who is in charge, that's how the hierarchy, the structure of the divisions are set up. Like we're from the Division of Student Affairs, and now it's including academic affairs. Well, now what they've taken away is our director of our center being able to go to monthly meetings. They're not doing it anymore, which was our major way of connecting with these faculty. So our director now is trying to purposely try to infuse meetings that he sets up so that they're able to share that kind of information with the faculty. So some of that was out of our control when the higher level administration changed. I personally like those monthly meetings because sometimes I would be invited as well to go. And that's where you get the key players involved.
If I may, what we do at the end of every, about 2-3 weeks before the semester ends, myself and the coordinator will sit down and we'll go through and be like, okay, so it's been pretty successful. We keep track of monthly, weekly attendance from all the SI leaders. We have spreadsheets seeing how everything's going. But what we do is we sit there and we look at it and okay, So we're going to expand the SI program into these other courses. We look at them and we say, okay, this course is done, you know, pretty poorly, consistently, whatever. So we're gonna put an SI leader into it next semester. What we do is we send out a kind of packet, if you will, through email to any prospective professors. And if we don't hear anything back from them, we just assume all is well. We've never had somebody say no. So we just sort of give them, here's what SI is, here's the SI leader's job description, here are the benefits. You're gonna have one in your class next semester, just wanted to give you a heads up. At the end of every semester, we also send to our existing instructors an email that says, hey, you know, do you have any suggestions on people that you would like to see as SI leaders? And I think that's, like you guys do, you get these professors saying, yeah, this person did really well, I worked really well with them. They're much more likely to be like, yeah, bring them in, sort of thing. But just sending them out, if they don't say, no, I don't want somebody in there, awesome, then you're gonna have somebody in there. And you just sort of build that relationship into the new classes as you go.
Yeah, that's the model that we used at Wayne State when I was an SI leader. So if we had like a psych stats class, it wouldn't, so I would go to like the one lecture, but anybody from any lecture could go to the session. But at Eastern, I'm with Dr. Smith, and I can only take students from Dr. Smith.
Okay.
Because the professors teach so differently. We have 2 bio professors that teach some of the bigger classes, and they're just on totally different levels. And our SI leaders have told us that too. But we had a more experienced SI leader this past semester, and he said, you know what, I've had this professor before and this professor, let's let the students come to both of our sessions, because we couldn't find somebody else for that other position.
I had one last question. Do you have any data that kind of correlates the grades with the students that have attended these sessions?
Yep, I actually did a poster presentation at our graduate research fair just a few weeks ago, and I did the mean difference of the grades, so students who attended SI at least once and students who never attended SI, and I found that at least 6 or 7 out of, I think we had like maybe 35 classes, they were actually significant, but all the other ones, they were still higher, but they just weren't significant. But that could be because just not enough students are going. So,
There's a lot of study out there about the impact of
Yeah.
this. The break-even point seems to be students who attend at least 5 sessions. That really starts to make an impact. Somebody who, because we have always looked at it that way. If they attend 1 to 4 sessions, here's their grade. If they attend 5+, here's their grade. If they attend zip, here's their grade. And the difference seems to be that, okay, if they attend 5+, then they're in the habit and they tend to stay there. They tend to keep coming. That's part of the rationale for saying it's mandatory for the first 2 weeks, 3 weeks, or whatever. You get people in the habit of showing up. There they are. And it's built right into their schedule for SLA. It doesn't have, you don't have to take us time like you do with SI, so it's a little bit different.
All right, everybody, we've got 5 minutes. Please fill out that yellow piece of paper. You can continue asking questions. I just want to make sure that paper is getting it back.